When President Trump and I first spoke about me working for him, I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, sir, I'm not just going to be your lawyer. I know I'm going to do more for you than that.
Do you think you got your job because of your looks?
Absolutely not. Maybe I just am a good lawyer. He must hate immigrants. He must hate women. Well, I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman, and I'm his face on TV.
Could people be in a situation where they're voting for a potential president that is behind bars?
This case is just insanity. Now it's no one is above the law. Unless you're a Democrat.
How do we fix this? Alina, beautiful and smart and proud of it. I am so glad you're here.
Oh, boy.
Let's cause some trouble.
Wouldn't it be better if I was not all of those things? That they would leave me alone.
It would not be better, and they would never leave you alone. Let's start. For those who have been living under a rock and don't know who you are, just share your background. Who are you?
It's so surreal when people say that to me. Who am I? Loaded question. Who am I? What do I do? I'm a lawyer. What do I do now? I'm a lawyer with a big mouth on TV for President Trump. I'm a senior advisor to his campaign. I'm a mom. I have 2 children of my own, 8 and 10, and a stepmom to a 17-year-old. They're all wonderful. I'm a wife, a daughter. I'm an Arab. I'm a first-generation American, and I'm a Catholic.
You truly do it all. You
Try.
have had such an interesting upbringing and background. I want to start with that because very few people know about your personal life. So if it's okay, let's go into that a little bit. Where are your parents from?
Baghdad, both of them, born and raised.
And why did they come from Iraq to the United States?
Well, Saddam Hussein was a dictator. My parents' families both were successful in the Middle East, and they also happen to be Catholic. And those things don't jive so well. So they escaped religious persecution, like many people in this world, unfortunately.
And what was your life like growing up as an immigrant kid?
I was a dork. You know, my parents weren't like everybody else's, so I was kind of dorky growing up.
Nobody believes that.
I'm sorry, it's so true. You can fact check me. I was not a cool kid for most of my childhood. I had a hard time. I didn't like school because of it. I went to an all-girls school. Everybody that I was friends with was blonde, blue-eyed, gorgeous. I was not that. I was the braces. Coke bottle glasses dork whose parents wouldn't let her dress like everybody else and had super strict parents. And it was hard. It was definitely hard. And then I came into my own, but you know, it was not so easy growing up with
probably a
parents.
Good thing you had some hard experiences as a kid. Prepared you for today.
Yeah, it's called resilience. It's called armor. Our children don't have enough armor, in my opinion. So, you know, we protect them. We think that they're all supposed to be winners and they're all supposed to get a trophy. And if somebody bullies them, their mom storms into the school and flips out. You know, I'm not that parent. I don't have time to be that parent. I'm the opposite of a Karen because I can't be. And my parents most certainly were not entertaining any complaints about nonsense. So I think it made me who I am. I believe everything in life makes you who you are.
You are an attorney. You've been an attorney for a while. It's not that your first job was with Donald Trump. Can you just describe some of that?
Oh, I know. You know what? The best line that people always say, Trump hires a parking garage attorney. I got this great hit piece that it was so funny. I remember sitting there thinking if they only understood that the company that I was general counsel for is worth hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate transactions I was doing a year with some of the biggest families and family offices in the country, the largest. And they called me the parking garage attorney. They try and make you small. Yeah, no, sorry, folks.
You know, the New York Times called me a Hebrew tutor.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know,
what an honor.
What
an honor for them to try to make you small. It's funny, the liberal media that literally... They always say, we're so inclusive. We love women. We want strong women. Be strong. Get out there. And then you knock down the strong ones because you don't agree with their ideology. Doesn't make sense to me.
Or they can't control us.
Oh, I am very hard to control. You can ask President Trump. I am. But you know what? Those are the good ones. You want the truth. You know, I think that's why some people listen to what I say because I'm not a liar. I don't care enough to lie, to be honest. I'm not trying to conform to whatever it is box that you think I'm supposed to be in. I'm good right where I am. So,
how did Donald Trump find you?
Well, I was a member at his club. I like to tell him that too, so that he remembers I was a successful attorney and I was a member at his club and I was doing very well. I've been practicing 15 years. I had a lot of very large clients. I had hundreds of cases. I had my own law firm. And I was recommended. I mean, like anybody else. And I remember the GM asked me for my business card. And I got a call one day and I was asked to come in and interview. And then I had many interviews, interviewed with his organization, his general counsel, his son, who runs most of the Trump organization. And, of course, with the president. It was quite daunting.
Can I ask you a question that might be offensive?
Highly unlikely. Go ahead.
Do you think you got your job because of your looks?
Absolutely not. That's actually a problem for the job I got. That would actually be more hurtful to him to have a good-looking attorney, right? I do think that that's been a problem, is that he, I always got knocked. And if I was an overweight male in my 60s, I don't think anybody would be speaking about me. But at the same time, I think that was a problem for him. I think that, part of my process and journey with him has been getting to know his wife and earning her respect. And she's lovely. And she has to be comfortable with me as well. And she has to be comfortable with me being next to him in court every day as a younger woman. And I think I've earned that respect. I mean, she's somebody I consider a friend, and I think she's lovely. And she came to my birthday with her father. But yeah, no, it's only been a problem for the media to consume that and not think that some other scheme is going on. And I know that's a whole bag that they just can't swallow. Maybe I just am a good lawyer. And I'm a really good lawyer, and I'm a really great advocate.
I love that about you, that you just don't care, because I think so many women who have big careers feel like they actually need to make themselves look worse in order to gain respect in the career world.
Yeah, you're not going to be taken seriously if you walk in 6-inch heels. Or
is that in fact true? Because you're
maybe
taken
initially,
seriously.
Maybe initially people. Initially, I think it was an issue, and then I opened my mouth. And all hell breaks loose. And it doesn't matter. If I could make a mistake in court and it'll be a headline, Alina Habba doesn't know how to put evidence in. Well, no, that's not what happened. But it's a spin. And what I know is I'm very good for clickbait because they keep talking about me. And there will be cases that I'm not even on, and my face will be plastered on the front of a lawsuit, the hush money case, that I'm not even trying. But they can't stop.
Can you explain your role? So there are several attorneys that work for the president. So what is your role there?
So it's such an evolving role. I originally was just one of his many attorneys. I handled cases for him, still do, as an attorney. He has numerous attorneys handling things. There are attorneys for the Trump. It wasn't bad. When I started with him, there was not this. There were no indictments. There was no raids. There was none of that. I was just his lawyer. Like any other lawyer, I would sit in a room full of a bunch of older attorneys. I was always the youngest. And I remember walking in and they all looked at me and go, And I was like, oh yeah, huh? So I got my first case and I won it so fast. And an older attorney who's very well known in New York had it for 5 years, hadn't been as effective as I was in 2 months. And the case got completely withdrawn and dismissed. We didn't settle. It was dismissed. And then I earned their respect. But it didn't come without a price. A lot of hit pieces, a lot of terrible fake media attacking me, attacking my looks, attacking all of that. But I don't really care.
When I think of attorneys, I always assume that you'll never forget one of your first cases. I mean, there's that one that just feels like it gave you the confidence that put you on the map. Yeah. Do you have one of those?
I have one that made me proud to be a lawyer. That was that moment where you're just like, this is why I'm here and this is why I do what I do. It was a young kid. He was a minor. And he had been photographed unintentionally by a photographer, but carelessly, negligence. And that photograph had his privates displayed, and it was put on the cover of a website, a very well-known website. And that kid got a lot of heat for that. And it was so unfair. When we resolved that case, he got his life back. And I remember a while after, he had sent us at the firm a note saying he had just gone to prom and thank you for all you did and getting his life back. And part of that was just moving on from that. He had moved. He had the money to move. He was in school, going to college, started over. And you just realize you're like a doctor that can help cure sometimes. You're not always the big bad lawyer suing big businesses. This is a human business as well. So, yeah, I remember that. It was a good feeling. It was a good day.
You like fighting bullies.
Love fighting bullies, especially bullies that say they hate bullies.
That claim that they hate bullies.
They're such bullies. You're the bully. You're the bully. I'm the victim of bullying. People bully me all the time. All the time.
Do.
Famous people all the time, relentlessly. SNL, 2 weeks in a row, while I'm on trial for a woman claiming she's being defamed and the victim of defamation. I'm getting defamed. I'm getting death threats. And they did it over and over. And you're watching the hypocrisy. The people that hate, it's the ones that can't take it. It's just, but they can dish it.
Well, people say that Donald Trump is a bully, and people say that specifically Donald Trump treats women awfully. Mm. Well, you've spent quite a bit of time with him. I'm curious.
Years. I would, to go back to your question prior, I was not just his attorney. He elevated me to be general counsel of his PAC. I oversaw the cases that the PAC went under our world, our domain, and that was most of them. And I would literally approve all of these male attorneys, female attorneys, more senior than me. And I would have to oversee, make sure they weren't doing anything, or it was the biggest honor. That's a position of trust that if you are a misogynist, you're just not doing. And he got heat for having me as his lawyer. He got heat. He still gets heat for it. And he's the opposite of that. He has been my champion and my cheerleader in many regards. I always say that to him. I was on the cover of Top 100 Lawyers, and I wrote him a note and I said, thank you for giving me the platform to have a voice. And when I gave it to him, he said to me, you had a little something to do with that yourself.
And give you the credit. Where do you think it's coming from, these accusations that he's so anti-women? I mean, I think that's been such a big part of the narrative against him.
Yeah, I think it's a problem that happens when you're powerful. It happens when you're effective. It happens when you're famous. There are people that are wrongfully accused of things all the time as an attorney. That's true. There are things that are true that people can't hack. Maybe he speaks to me no differently than he would speak to any other attorney, but I don't call that misogyny. I call that fair. I don't want to be treated with white gloves. I think that unfortunately we have a victimization problem in this country. Women in particular, I think, sometimes want to make themselves the victim because they feel that then that is perhaps what they tell themselves the reason of why they're not breaking through some of the barriers. And by the way, it exists. There are barriers. But I've never used it as an excuse. I just keep pushing. It exists. It's a problem in our country, but I don't feel sorry for myself for 1 minute.
It's so interesting because I'm a professional woman myself, and I'm raising daughters, and I want them to have everything, every opportunity possible. And I want them to experience equality in the way that you and I have experienced equality. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like we're being robbed of that when there is a push for equity. And there is a huge difference between asking for equality in the way that it sounds like President Trump has given you an equal opportunity versus a demand for absolute equity, that we make it to the finish line, that we're given the crutch, And when women like us are successful based on our own merit, when you have the narrative of equity in the background, it takes away from people like you.
Takes your credit away. You know, it's a problem because I would just say to every woman that pushes that narrative that says, I'm not treated fairly and I want to be treated fairly, I just want to say to them, do you want to be treated fairly because you earned it? Or do you want to be given the opportunity because you whined your way into it? And I'm not that. Okay, I'm just not. I remember when President Trump and I first spoke about me working for him, I looked him dead in the eyes and I said, sir, I'm not just going to be your lawyer. I know I'm going to do more for you than that. I have a good voice. He said, what do you mean? I'll never forget it. What do you mean by that? I said, you'll see. I remember I told him, you'll see. And I just knew in that moment. And I don't ever want him to treat me with white gloves. I hope no woman, I mean, if a woman is asking for that and then turning around and saying, I'm being treated unfairly, well, I wonder why. Buck up. Let's do it, but do it the right way, right? I don't ever want to be given a hand. I was never given a case and I have no problem sitting second chair. Sometimes I need to sit second chair. You know why? Because maybe an attorney on the team is going to be better at doing that trial than me. And you know what? You take it. Sometimes, I hate to say, you eat shit and you take it and you smile because that's part of life. And then you get up. You know how many times the world has thought I gotten fired and they get excited? I remember Kaylin Collins, CNN. Oh my God, President Trump just put out a truth looking for an appellate attorney. He has fired Alina Habba. It's finally happened. It was like glee from a woman who's successful, who's famous, she's all those things. Why? That negative pushing other women down. I think women are worse than men, to be honest. I think women push other women down worse. They're jealous and horrible. Horrible sometimes to each other.
Yeah.
Horrible
I agree.
To each other.
I agree. You got to pick your friends wisely.
Ugh.
I want to ask you one more Donald Trump question.
Tell me.
Does he listen to advice?
Absolutely. He may not take it. I don't always take advice. He listens to everything. He listens. You're not in his orbit if he doesn't want you there. You're not around. And when he wants an opinion and he'll ask a direct opinion or a question, who should I pick for VP? He asks. And sometimes I give him advice, even when he doesn't ask. But he has never shut me up. He listens to numerous people. And by the way, his team is incredibly female-oriented. There's a lot of women on his team. And they're not in low-level roles. I mean, the head of his campaign is a female. And she's wonderful. And she's a mama bear, but you also don't want to cross her. And I love that. He listens. He just, like everybody, he's made somebody, he's made something of himself. He's crossed boundaries nobody thought he could. And he has his own instincts and he has his own wife that he goes home and reflects to, I'm sure, and says, hey, this is all the noise. And I'm sure, they sit down, they make decisions like anybody. Of course, it's not always the same decision that I would want, but he's his own man.
What are some of the cases that you feel like you have worked on for Donald Trump that you're proud of?
Every case I'm proud of. I am proud of every single case, but no, my most favorite win. There's a couple of things. There's my most favorite case. My most favorite win was Michael Cohen. Beat him several times. Press won't talk about it.
You get to talk about it on Real Talk.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The first case, Summer Zervos, because it was the antithesis of what we're talking about. Like this was, there's a woman, and you make a claim and you sue, and you, for whatever the reasons, they're hers. And then I won that one. And then I became the woman everybody hates because I'm anti-feminist, right? I'm not a feminist because I beat a woman. How dare I? Or the E. Jean Carroll case. How dare she cross-examine a woman who's crying about getting defamed or what? I get that. I get that every day of my life. But my most favorite was Michael Cohen because he is just everything I never want to be. How horrible is that to say? Oh, sorry. but he is everything I don't want to be and everything the media wants me to be. A fixer, a this, a that. And, Trump's lawyer going to get disbarred, and they try and do all those things. So when I beat him, the man that used to have a role and now doesn't and has literally made a career off of my client, his career is on Donald Trump, based on Donald Trump. Beating him was epic. Beating him twice was really good. And now he's trying to go to the Supreme Court. And if he does, I'll beat him again. If
you're on the left, you would have been on every cover.
Oh, there'd be
everywhere. Everywhere.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Like Melania. Yes, I could, but it won't happen because I'm not on the left. I'm not on their team. I'm not home team. So I'm on the team pro-America, pro-woman. The true American pro-woman team, frankly, is the Republican Party. We're actually the opposite of what people think we are. It's funny because we are composed of really strong women. If you look at them, maybe we're not jumping up and down in Brooklyn like AOC and being obnoxious. But that doesn't mean that we don't support women and we're not strong. Maybe we also appreciate being a mom and cooking some nights. Doesn't mean we're weak. I probably would have been on some covers. It's all right.
Alina, I am losing faith in the justice system in America.
Yeah.
I watch what you've gone through. I watch what some others have gone through.
Yeah.
And I think many Americans are just in shock.
Yeah, they should be. They should be. I'm losing faith. But there are fighters. There is a constitution. We haven't gone so far as to screw that up. We've ignored it. There have been bad decisions by politically motivated people. The problem in our country truly is not the justice system as much as politics. When politics permeate the justice system, we have a problem. That's what's happened. We should not have donors influencing judges, influencing DAs, AGs. The justice system in our country was created in a very near perfect way. Due process, freedom of speech, with limits, with accountability, with laws. When we start disregarding laws for some, but not for one, it's not America. So if we can get back to our system, which exists, is the bedrock of our country. It exists. You should not lose faith. It still is our country. If we can clean up the mess of politics, I think we'll get into a better spot. It's funny. President Trump had the ability to persecute Hillary Clinton when he was president. He chose not to. That was America. Now it's no one is above the law unless you're a Democrat.
How do we fix this?
We got to clean the top. The problem is it all permeates from the Department of Justice, the head of the president, the attorney general of this country. That's why this election, I think, is incredibly critical for my industry, for the American people to have more faith in America again, and to make sure we don't turn into a third world country where we attack our political opponents or attack their lawyers and scare them so that they don't represent people. Mm-hmm. What a world are we in? I mean, that's some low-level stuff. That's not American. That's third world stuff.
Feels a little like Baghdad.
It's a lot like Baghdad.
I'm honestly scared. Mm-hmm. I'm even scared to do this interview. I mean, I kind of get over my fears in 2 seconds, but because I feel like because we have to fight for America. But I'm watching what's happening in the UK right now. Mm-hmm. And that is what they want us to do. They want us to be scared. They want us to be scared to interview people like you, to platform people like you, to speak the truth. Can you just make some remarks on that? I mean, what you're watching in the UK, are you worried that this is going to come here?
No, we have terrorism at an unheard of level, criminals. Am I afraid that it's going to come here? I think it is here. But there's a way to fix it. So we can't be scared. You can't be scared. That's what they want. That's the machine, is to create fear. If you create fear, you will shut down. You will become oppressed. You will become censored, and you will conform. You cannot do that. The great people in the history of this country were the ones in this exact situation that were the victims of this but spoke up. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, people that had voices when they weren't supposed to. Rosa Parks. I mean, I could go on and on. People persecuted, prosecuted, and then they stepped up. Jesus So where do you want to be in this world? Do you want to be insignificant and a follower? Or do you want to be a person that follows your morals and the fabric of who you are and were raised to be? You know, my parents fled from that, and I most certainly will not go down for doing what's right. What am I doing wrong exactly? You know, what is it that bothers you so much that I do? I represent President Trump. I represent the Constitution, America. And I go on TV and I speak facts about what I see in court and what I see in our justice system. And the only reason that would upset anybody is because they're part of that problem.
What scares me more than anything is watching what's happening to America and then having to face my kids as they grow up.
Yeah, we have to protect them.
And then saying to them that I haven't done enough, right? That is where my real fear
That's
is.
why I
waking
fight.
up every single morning and asking myself, have I done enough to protect this country?
I can tell you, you have. You are. You know, what we're doing right now is what you're doing. There's a lack of trust in the media. So people are going to trust who they're going to trust. And if that happens to be you, or it happens to me, by joining forces, we're getting a message out, and you can listen to it, you can ignore it, you can do whatever you want with it. But the truth of the matter is, I'll never go down saying I haven't done enough.
Well, you for sure.
And you as well. It's called having balls.
As women. With children. How do you do it? How do you raise the kids, manage life, manage your huge practice?
Same way you do, Marissa. Same way you do. Day at a time. Days you feel bad, you're not giving enough to work, you're not giving enough to your kids, you're never going to be perfect, but day at a time. Try your best. Cry. I'm good with crying. There's nothing wrong with crying. That's another thing. Like, you're allowed to cry.
Yeah.
You're allowed to be like, God, I suck today.
You're also allowed to pray.
You're allowed to pray. Opposite of fear is faith. I always say it. Opposite of fear is faith. I believe in God. I believe in God's plan. When there are bad days, I believe I am there for a reason. I'm going through it to learn something. My life is so far from perfect, and it's good. I'm glad it's imperfect. It's made me resilient. It's given me armor.
I cannot imagine a harder time than what you went through with the Stormy Daniels case.
Oof.
That was pretty nasty.
That was a nasty case.
You know, for bystanders, viewers like me, it was very confusing. I'm not sure that people can really even articulate what the case was fully about.
They still cannot.
Can you
No,
just
honestly,
so we
the judge
have a
could not.
record of history here?
Right, of course.
Explain what happened.
Well, realistically, factually, 8 years ago, they looked at this case, Cy Vance, and he said, this is not a case. Michael Cohen, actually, going back to Michael Cohen, brought it to his attention. Yeah. Hey, I was a lawyer for Trump, and I went and paid somebody to not go to the news with a story, which, by the way, is a celebrity, which he's been for a very long time prior to his presidency. That's a normal occurrence, okay? True, not true, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's not worth the headache. And paid his lawyer back, took care of it. Then he runs for president.
So it was like what, extortion money?
It was well, look, I'm not going to speak to to this person, but at the end of the day, there was a settlement.
Okay.
Right? You pay somebody, you're done. Go away. Stop. I'm going to go to this person. And you could see shopping around for those things. Now, what's the crime in that? Well, there was none. So 8 years ago, they decided not to bring it. 6 years ago, this DA decided not to bring it. DAs from the Department of Justice were put on his group to try and bring it because President Trump was a threat because he might be running again. They didn't bring it. The guy that came from the DOJ was so mad he wrote a book about how pissed he was that they didn't bring the lawsuit against Donald Trump for something that was past the statute of limitations, not illegal. NDAs are not illegal. You're allowed to pay for it. It was all these crazy things, but they were trying to weaponize. That was the start of it. And nothing happened. And then what happened in history? He announces he's running again. Indictment 1, indictment 2, Mar-a-Lago raid. It goes on and on and on. And who gets on the bandwagon? The same DA that said that there was no case 6 years ago decides to bring a case.
Okay, so, but wasn't the case that the money was taken out of his campaign in order to, isn't that what the narrative is?
The narrative is—
you gotta set the record straight.
Their story is that the payment was even though the payment was made to Michael Cohen after the president was in the Oval Office, that he did this payment to win the election. I assure you, there was no campaign finance fraud, and Stormy Daniels was not the end-all be-all of President Trump becoming the president in 2016. But that's the story, and they're sticking to it. And now we have a destruction of the Oval Office that the Supreme Court has really done right by the Oval, not just President Trump, but the executive branch, and said that there are certain things that presidents have to do while they're in their official duties as president. And as long as you're doing that in that official duty, you're protected from getting out of the presidency and being sued left, right, and center, sued for bombing someone, sued for— you can't operate as the sole person in the executive branch with fear of being sued by people when you leave office. And that's what the Supreme Court decided. So now this case, and effectively before, frankly, this case should have been tossed out. He was the president. He didn't do anything. He wasn't even in Trump Tower when it happened. He was in the Oval Office when this all happened. I mean, that's how crazy it is. But the claim for them is Stormy was going to come out with her case. He paid her off so he could win the election. It's campaign finance. Although I'll tell you, we still can't articulate what the crime was, because when he gave the jury instructions, there was like a menu of 4 underlying crimes that he could have been wanting to cover up, and they did not have to define what that was. They didn't even have to agree.
Well, this is what I was hoping to get out of you, is to understand
No, I can't explain
what
it
is
to
the
you.
crime that you're defending. How do you defend a crime you don't understand?
Very good question.
Okay, I'm actually relieved because I thought something's wrong with me. I usually have decent comprehension abilities.
But do you know how many people ask me that question? Alina, can you please explain to us what this case is about? I said, no. Because the judge himself couldn't define it and said to the jury, you don't have to actually know what the crime was that he wanted. All you have to decide is it was so that he could win an election, that he paid this person. You don't even have to decide if it happened, it didn't. Not relevant. And they were allowed to bring in so much noise and irrelevant facts with a judge, by the way, who should have recused himself. We asked him to recuse so many times. But look, I'm not a criminal attorney, but I can assure you that I was in the same boat with you reading that indictment, scratching my head. And so were some of the most brilliant Alan Dershowitz and people in this country that I respect. And Alan Dershowitz is not a conservative, but he even said this case is just insanity. It's insanity. It's un-American. It's past the statute of limitations. It's such a desperate yield of power by election interference to keep him in court. And I've been in court with him for the better of 3 years. There are certain protections that the government officials, when they go into Washington, are given. Now, the presidential immunity, the absolute immunity, it's called, is the highest form. And it's for a reason. It's for a reason. It's the same thing. It'll protect Joe Biden when he comes out from being sued for doing God knows what. And it doesn't mean that you have a right to maliciously go after somebody for no reason outside of the scope of your job as president. There are limitations. But this is something that started back decades ago. It's an old, respected law that now they are trying to change, which is dangerous because I don't think they realize it will hurt their side as well if you take away those immunities. So Supreme Court upheld it, and Judge Merchan now has to decide whether this case should be thrown out because he was the president while this was happening.
So could people be in a situation where they're voting for a potential president that is behind bars?
I don't put anything past them. Somebody asked me that, and I said, I remember a year ago saying I think they would kill him if they could. And here we are. Yeah.
I'm assuming you spent quite a bit of time with President Trump since he was shot.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that experience changed him, impacted him?
For sure. I don't think in any way other than positive. I think that he was always spiritual, but I think that he can't deny that God's hand was on him that day. It's something he talks about. You know, he's still in shock, I think, to some extent. He talks about it frequently, you know. And then there was this buzzing by my ear, and you hear him talk about it, and the whole team was rattled. You know, those are my friends on the team that I was watching run in the background into the motorcade. And I panicked for everybody and for our country. Who was shot? What is this going to mean? So he knows the gravity of what happened. He realizes it. But I will tell you, the man's still bubbly. I flew with him the next day after he was nearly assassinated to the RNC. And I was rattled. I didn't know what to say. I was at a loss for words when I saw him. And he just was smiling. And even though he had this big bandage and the doctors are on the plane checking him and all this, and he was himself, but grateful like anybody would be who almost died.
How do you do this? How do you not despair? You're so deep in it. I mean, lawfare, politics.
Yeah.
The attacks, the media attacks on you.
We're winning. We are winning. Jack Smith, look at that disaster. Wrongfully appointed. There are judges out there that have sense and sensibility. The media will always be the media. Somebody told me very early on in this game when I was mortified because of one of my early hit pieces, I effectively got a chin up, buck up speech from a member of the Trump family. And I remember I was in tears and they were like, Habba, you're in it. Put your seatbelt on. It's not going to get any better. Boy, did it not get any better. But I will tell you, I don't think they'd be talking about me if I wasn't effective. So keep talking.
Does religion play a role in your life?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, of course. Family, support, friends. But religion. God's plan. When they're nasty, when I have a bad day, when I think it's over, I say if it's over for a reason. When people threaten you, when they say, oh, you're going to lose your license, you're this, you're that, you're a disgrace. Somebody screamed at me one day walking to trial, you're a disgrace. It was a young guy, good-looking guy, looked like a typical hedge fund New York guy, screamed at me across the street, you're a disgrace. And I thought to myself, am I? And then I was like, I'm not the one screaming at somebody at 8 a.m. in the street who's just going to work. I'm going to work. Like, I'm going to work. Leave me alone. I think that God, in all of those times where you get sad for a moment, you pray. I hope people pray to whatever, whoever, somebody. I think the scariest thing in America is the lack of spirituality. That can really make you lose your way. So I don't have that problem.
Do you go to church with your kids?
Yes, I do. I go to church. When I'm home, I go to church. My church actually has a Zoom link. Even past COVID, had a Zoom link for so long. It was so great. And my priest is amazing because he actually was a bartender before he became a priest. And he's a real person with real life experiences. So I find him easy to relate to. And when he speaks to you, not in verse, but like you and I are speaking. And I think that's very effective. And my children like it. They like going to church. They like it. I go to CCD. We do family-based CCD together. We do all of that.
What do your parents think about your job? They wanted an attorney daughter.
Yeah,
they got one.
They get one. My parents are so proud. They love my job. They love my work. They worry. They worry about my safety. They know I get death threats. I get attacked. They know, I get mail. They get mail. Packages, strange packages, all of it, all of the things, but they're so proud. There isn't a time, I don't think there's one day where my parents don't tell me, so-and-so came up to us and they asked if you're our daughter and they tell her to keep up the good, and they're so happy. They're just so proud.
And they're Arab immigrants, but they're okay with you being part of the Trump campaign?
They love President Trump. They know his kids, they know his wife, they think he's a wonderful person. And I think that knowing him, this storytelling that, the world likes to do with people, it's so unfair. He's a good person and he's been so good to me. And they know that. They know that even when he's tough on me, it's only to make you better. I think he likes his fighters. He knows I'm a fighter. But he also knows when it's time to take it easy on me sometimes. And he's just a good human. His family is amazing. His family is part of the unit for me because I work with the organization and him, and they all work together. They're just all wonderful.
You don't feel like he's unfair to immigrants?
That's comical to me. Unfair to immigrants. I was in Michigan And they asked me about the Muslim ban. I said, what Muslim ban? Well, I know there was a Muslim ban. I said, how do you know there was a Muslim ban? And I was sitting with Ambassador Rick Grinnell. And he said, well, if there was a Muslim ban, me, having been in the role I was in when he was president, would have been told there was most certainly not a Muslim ban. And you hear these narratives that the left kind of start. You have to educate yourself. So why is it that people think this exists? Well, because we had immigration with rules. We didn't have open borders. So what happened was they would look at countries with war. Unfortunately, the Middle East has been at war a lot. This was now all we hear is Ukraine and Israel, unfortunately. And we're looking at all of this. Well, of course, they're going to be vetted differently, or that doesn't mean there's a Muslim ban. That's the spin. He must hate immigrants. He must hate women. He must hate all these things. Well, I'm an immigrant. I'm a woman, and I'm his face on TV. So show me the proof. It doesn't exist. No, he cares about immigration vetting. And I think it's good for our country. Open borders don't work. We have a fentanyl crisis, and our administration is ruining our country.
When you talk about immigration and you talk about the wars around the world, one of the things that people are talking about right now is America first versus America only. And I wonder if there's a distinction for you when it comes to that.
Yeah, there is.
Because you obviously have an eye on what's happening in the border. You have family that immigrated from Iraq, gave your family an opportunity to come here and give you the life that you have today. And so how do you balance that? America first versus America only?
I think the best way to explain that, America first, which is what I believe, not America only, is when you get on a plane and they tell you that you have to put your mask on before you help your children. They're your children. You love them. There's no question you want to help them. But if you are not well and you can't breathe, we cannot be using resources to help anyone else. Fix yourself first, and then we will take care of the rest. And I do think America is this amazing superpower. We are an example. We are a lot of what helps drive a lot of countries' economies. When we're not doing well, it affects other countries. So I think that's the best way I could explain it. I think that's America first, not America only, but put your mask on first. Get your gas mask on first. The plane is crashing. And then you can help other people.
Final question for you, Alina. You are the embodiment of what the left loves to hate. You're a successful woman. You have raised children. You are a huge attorney. Your family immigrated from Iraq. What is your message for people who have similar backgrounds to yours? Because I think that people are politically homeless. They're struggling with figuring out where they belong. People are looking to belong to a camp with the assumption that they have to agree with everything 100%, which I think is really tough.
Yeah.
And so I'd imagine that many people who are listening right now are just trying to figure out where to be and who can they support. These are really, really challenging times because on the one hand, we know so little, and on the other hand, we know too much. And so there's this confusion and very, very important big decisions.
Yeah. I don't agree with everything Republican. I think that, let me start by saying that. I think that my values are more in line with it. I think it's sad that the left want to make me a monster when I am the embodiment of what they say they want. It's hypocritical. It's ironic. But I would say to the women that are lost, you don't have to agree on everything. And there's another thing. You don't have to sit at dinner with President Trump. That's not what we're voting to do. We're voting for our children and our economy and our safety. We don't agree with every policy. I don't agree with every decision. That's not my job. I'm his lawyer and I'm an advisor, but that doesn't mean I agree on everything. And I think that women need to hear that it's okay to say, I don't agree on everything, but I agree on most. And that the Republican Party in general is not a bunch of quote unquote Bible thumping, gun toting. By the way, I love my guns and I love my Bible, but I'm very realistic. I'm realistic about abortion. I'm realistic about a lot of things. I have life experiences that are not typical. I'm divorced. I'm remarried. I don't fit the perfect box. Technically, I'm not supposed to go to church and get communion. That's okay. And there's a home for you. I think that the liberal media and unfortunately most really loud, radical left people that are famous right now for being on the left don't like women and don't want strong women unless it's them. But there's jealousy. And I would just say, surround yourself with good women. My best friends are my world. I could not live a day in my life without them. I have the best support system. We are moms. Some work, some don't work. We're all wives. And cut the fat out of your life. You know what? I think that I would share a story. I went on CNN with Caitlin Collins. And I only share her because, frankly, MSNBC doesn't really like to invite me on. And she's effectively a liberal version of a media voice, right? So an equivalent to some extent of somebody on Fox. And I mean, not really, but but I went on her show, and before the cameras started rolling, we had the most lovely conversation. And I said, let's just talk when the camera starts rolling. We don't need to attack each other. And we did. We talked. And then she threw in she tried to catch me on something. And when the camera turned, she looked at me and she went, sorry.
Oh, man.
And I looked and I said, my God, how weak to do that. Why? You need you need the viewership. That's more important. And
or
after
she knows she needs to comply.
Yeah.
She knows she needs to comply.
Though, that to have to look and go, sorry.
Yeah.
I've never done that once. I've never looked at somebody and went, sorry. If I say something, I mean it. And if I'm asking, and I'll tell you right now, President Trump has never made me say or do something that I have not agreed myself. Mm-hmm. And frankly, he's never directed me like that. But what a sad state of affairs to do that. And then after that, I stopped going on because for me, respect is a very big thing. I have to respect the people I talk to, and sometimes you don't, but to some extent, you have to earn my respect. I lost a lot of respect that day. And I haven't gone on, and I will say the viciousness of some of the comments that have come out of her mouth, having sat with me for maybe a total of 4 minutes. I can't understand how women could want to be affiliated with people like that. The Whoopi Goldbergs, never met me in my life, loves to talk about me on The View. Never met this person.
Yeah, it's all ad hominem attacks.
What are you doing? As a woman, you have 4 women sitting on The View, right? And they're just, doom. You're Trump, you're garbage, you're this, you're stupid, you're that.
Well, I mean, the other thing is they just assume that if you are a conservative, you must think a list of certain things.
You're a racist,
because
you're KKK.
If you're on the left, you must think of certain things. And so they assume the conservatives do the same thing. How lucky we are to be free.
Yeah, I've never had that problem with a conservative. And I've had disagreements, by the way, with conservative hosts. Yeah. I have never had any of them attack me the next day.
Of course.
That's such a weak thing to do.
Right.
And pathetic. And I can tell you, the party that I'm affiliated with is good if you're at home, is good if you're a working, strong woman.
Yeah.
And doesn't have to go that low. That's a low-level thing to do. And I think that's why, frankly, I think their media is suffering. I think that's why programs like yours are going to thrive, because you have the hard interviews with people that are controversial, but you listen, you talk. You're not trying to get clickbait.
And let people make their own decisions.
You can still, I assure you, people will still hate me.
Make their own decisions. They might just love you.
And they might hate me more.
We can read the comments.
Guess what? Who cares? Be authentic.
Exactly.
I will never be the person that has a comment and then when the camera turns, goes, sorry.
Yeah.
You'll never hear me do that.
Well, I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm proud of you for being free and speaking the truth. And we may not agree on everything.
No.
But that is what America is about.
100%. Respect.
Respect.